The Premier League is the most popular and lucrative league in football right now. With teams desperate to achieve success, billions of pounds are spent every year to take teams one step closer to lifting the trophy. Sometimes teams get it right and sign a player that completely revolutionizes the club. However, they can also get it spectacularly wrong, which ultimately drops them down the table. The Big Six in England spend the most year in year out, keeping a firm grip of their place at the top of the English game. With the form of some of these teams dropping, their transfers have looked desperate. After failing to qualify for the Champions League in their 3 previous campaigns, in the summer of 2019, Arsenal would break the club's record transfer fee on a player when they went on to sign Nicolas Pepe from Lille for £72 million. After an impressive season in France where he scored 23 goals and provided a further 12 assists, Pepe was on most clubs' radar, but it was Arsenal that would eventually win the race for the talented winger. He arrived in North London and had a relatively slow start to life in England in comparison to his final season in France. The slow start was justifiable, as it can take world-class players time to adapt to the physical needs of the Premier League. Not only was he adapting to a new league and teammates, but after only being at the club a couple of months, Unai Emery, the manager who brought Pepe to the club, was sacked and replaced by Mikel Arteta, who had a completely different way he wanted Arsenal to play. Whilst Pepe occasionally had his moments on the pitch, whether that was scoring a free kick or a beautiful bit of skill, he was never consistent enough on the pitch to fully convince Arteta. Arteta wasn't impressed with Pepe off the pitch, as he often only put in the minimum amount of work that was required of him. This mixed with the emergence of local star boy Bukayo Saka, Pepe was sent out on loan to Nice after only 3 seasons in London. Unfortunately, his form never picked up in France either, and by the time he returned back to Arsenal from his loan, his contract was terminated by the club. After signing for a record fee, he only managed 27 goals across 112 games, and he now plays his football for Turkish side Trabzonspor. Across the city over at Stamford Bridge, it seems bad transfers are becoming a bit of a habit for new owner Todd Boehly. After only taking ownership of the club in 2022, he seems to have thrown the checkbook at any promising youngster the scout department could get their eyes on. Whilst some of the new signings like Caicedo and Lavia are yet to prove their price tag, amazingly, the worst signing Chelsea made was before Todd got involved at the club. In the summer of 2021, Romelu Lukaku signed for the club for a second time for a club record fee for the time of just less than £100 million. At the time, this transfer got a lot of Chelsea fans very excited, and rightly so. Lukaku had just won the Serie A with Inter Milan, scoring 24 goals in the league, was voted Serie A Footballer of the Year, and had a proven track record of scoring goals in the Premier League with over 100 goals in the competition. Lukaku started brightly, scoring on his first game back in an away victory over Arsenal, and followed that up with more goals. However, by December, he had broken his relationship with the fans and the manager after doing an interview with Sky Italia. In this interview, he came out and publicly criticized Thomas Tuchel, as well as letting the whole world know he wanted to go back to Inter Milan. It was to no surprise that Romelu was immediately dropped from the squad for the following game against Liverpool. Eventually, though, he was brought back into the team, but the goal scoring slowed down and finished the league campaign on only 8 goals. Despite being back in the squad, the damage was already done, and Lukaku eventually got his wish as he returned to Inter Milan on loan and is now currently playing for Roma this season on loan again. Unlike Pepe, the one saving grace from this deal is that Chelsea may be able to still recoup some of the initial £100 million. In recent times, Liverpool have often been praised for their smart recruitment process and seem to very rarely get it completely wrong. However, this has not always been the case. After Chelsea signed a seemingly underperforming Fernando Torres for £50 million in 2011, Liverpool had a lot of money to reinvest back into the squad. With that kind of money, they could buy some of the best attacking talents in the world. Funnily enough, they did. They used some of that money to buy Luis Suarez, who took the league by storm, and eventually became the best striker in the world at one point. With the remaining £35 million they had left, they decided to spend that on an unfit, out-of-form Andy Carroll. To put this into perspective, this made Carroll the 8th most expensive player of all time, as well as the most expensive Englishman. Carroll's playstyle was similar to a donkey's. Having signed for Liverpool with an injury problem, his game time was limited in the second half of the season. During his first full Premier League campaign at the club, Carroll went on to play 35 games in the competition, only scoring 4 league goals. Liverpool had seen enough and would send him on loan to West Ham, who would make the signing permanent the following year. The highlight of his Liverpool career was scoring a winner versus local rivals Everton in an FA Cup semi-final. Manchester United struggles since Sir Alex continue off the field. More often than not, the recruitment has been shocking. In the past decade, there has been numerous high-profile players such as Sancho, Pogba, and Sanchez, who have turned out to be a disappointment for the club. It doesn't get much worse than spending £85 million on Antony. This may be premature as he is still playing for the club regularly. However, looking at his performances this season, I can't see that being the case. He has played 23 games across all competitions so far this season for United, and he has only just managed to score, after finding the net against League Two Newport County. Whilst he has a few useless tricks up his sleeve that may convince someone he is an exciting winger, that would not be the case. He is not blessed with blistering pace to beat his man 1v1. He struggles to read the game and create chances for his teammates. His best moments come when he is aggressive in his defensive duties. In comparison to other wingers across the league, he is definitely below the average ability level and would struggle to start for the majority of teams. A lot of the blame has to fall on Erik ten Hag. After managing him at Ajax, it is believed he was the one who pushed this deal over the line. In 2008, Sheikh Mansour completed the takeover of Manchester City. While they are experiencing great success now, this didn't happen right away. With the club now having unlimited financial resources, they began targeting high-profile players. The problem was they had just finished 9th. So with not many players interested in the project, they had to pay over the odds for some average players. Their worst transfer came, however, 6 years later, under Manuel Pellegrini. After just pipping Liverpool to the title, City were keen to bolster the squad in an attempt to defend their title next year. They signed Eliaquim Mangala for a fee of £42 million from Porto, which made him the most expensive defender in British history. After an impressive debut against Chelsea, things quickly deteriorated from there. Constant errors at the back led to him being phased back out the starting lineup as Man City dropped down to a second-place finish. His form never picked up during his second season and was sent on multiple loans to Valencia and Everton in his final years at the club. After a record-breaking fee, Mangala had only managed 79 games by the time he left the club on a free. Unlike the other clubs, Tottenham haven't really failed in spectacular fashion when it comes to transfers. Most of their failed transfers are players that are barely recognizable to fans outside of Spurs, making it hard to pick out one specific player. They signed Bongani Khumalo at the end of the January transfer window in 2011 for a couple of million quid. He was loaned out for 5 consecutive seasons at the club and was released by the club at the end of his contract after playing a total of 0 minutes. In 2005, they spent £3 million on Raziak from Derby after impressing in the championship. He would only go on to play 8 matches for the club, scoring 0 goals before he was sold to Southampton after just 6 months. In 2008, they signed ex-Arsenal player David Bentley for £15 million. After being dubbed the next David Beckham, his form quickly dipped in a Tottenham shirt. After failing to impress on 4 separate loans and 42 appearances, he was released by Spurs, which ultimately made him retire from the sport at just age 29.